Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Peel TV. I'm your host, Joshua Sprague. Got an interview edition of TV Tuesday for you guys this week. Marci Blubaugh from AmazingGrazeFarm.com is here to speak with us today. She has a great story. She's a city slicker turned farmer. And there are a lot of people who are interested in doing exactly this, or they're wanting to become more self-sufficient with their food, or they just don't trust any of the food authorities anymore, and they want to know where that source is coming from. So if this is you, you are going to love this interview. She shares with us how she got started, those steps that you can take as well, and all the trials, the triumphs, the tribulations, all of that jazz to help you guys get started and become self-sufficient with your food if that's what you want to do. So enjoy the interview. Also, quick note, Marci did not have a webcam, so this is an audio-only version, but we will jump right on into it. I know you guys are going to love it. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Peel TV. Super excited today. Have a guest that I just came across a couple of weeks ago, Marci Blubaugh. Is that how you say your last name? I forgot to ask you that anyway.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, great. She and her husband run the website Amazing Graze Farm, and I got an email the other day from Marci, and I went and checked out her site, and I just thought, this is a really interesting story that she has, because she's basically an urbanite who has become a farmer, or a farmer in training, as you call it in your own words. So first off, welcome to the show. Super glad to have you here, Marci.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
So maybe you could give us just kind of the quick synopsis real quick before we run into the more in-depth background of your story, but kind of who you are and the quick overview of what Amazing Graze Farm is.
Amazing Graze Farm is what we believe is a blessing that we're allowed to live. We raise all of our own meats, and we raise enough extra that we're able to have some to sell to make ours free. We garden, and I ferment, I can, I dry, dehydrate, we freeze stuff. We try to raise and grow as much of our own food as we possibly can, and have some to share. But over the years, we've also had a lot of inquiries on, we've showed people one-on-one how to do this or that, and they've asked us lots of questions, or where do you get this, or whatever, which kind of is where the store started. Mm-hmm. And then also, we're just now starting homestead classes for a lot of the things people want to learn, how to make cheese and whole grain breads and making soap, and so we're just going to start teaching classes to accommodate that.
And those are all at your farm, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Cool. So kind of tell us a little bit about the background then, because I know you used to live in the city, and then you made this shift to the farm life. And what was the compulsion? Where did that come from? Why decide to do that? And kind of what's the story between going from that to where you are now?
I don't know. I guess I've loved to garden when I lived at home. In high school, I took 2 years of horticulture and a year of ag, although my ag was more conservation rather than farming. And but we were definitely city slickers. I mean, we were in the city, and we just started to look at things, where reading things probably 15 years ago, 16 years ago, what they started even then doing to our food. And we had some health issues. We were unable to have children and had gone through some medical things that we're horrified later to find out what we actually allowed to be done, and caused health issues with me, and just a lot of different things that made us start to examine what we were doing. But obviously, living in the city, a lot of people still today, they're like, well, I can't do anything. I live in the city. But we were looking around for what we could do.
So where did you start then? Because I think that's an important part to this, right? You're living in the city, you're experiencing some health challenges, you said, and you're kind of re-questioning, how do you work through this? And then where do you start? Because that's not an easy shift necessarily to make, to go from the city life to where you are right now. So what was the first thing that you did, or the first couple things that you did?
I think one of the very first things we did was to switch to whole grains.
Okay.
We, got a grain mill and one of the big bread mixers that got us going with being able to do that easily. And we, had to find a source for grain, which in Florida was very hard because nobody wanted to go down there with a truck because there's not a lot of return loads. So, but we worked that out, and that's probably where we first started. And then the next step would probably been a garden, and we couldn't do a big garden because we rented, and none of them wanted, You were
renting a home?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we rented until like 12 years ago.
Right.
But we did start our little farm on one of the rentals that the man actually let us do that, our last rental in Florida. But and then we had neighbors who happened to also be our pastor and his family, and they really wanted chickens. And we had moved out to this rental property. This is the one where we actually started anything farm life. And originally the man said nothing, no animals, no garden, no nothing. But we told him that, we were moving in that direction. So just so he knew, no, we were looking for somewhere else to live then. And so he changed his mind and allowed us to do it as long as we promised to return everything to what it was, which the whole back part of our property was just a field, fenced separately, and it was weeds. So that wasn't real hard.
Sounds like you had kind of an ideal setting there then.
Well, it was on the edge of a little town in Florida, and we had an acre and a tenth, and it was long and narrow. And like I said, our pastor was right next to us with the long, narrow one, and then there's somebody next to him, and then after that, it was somebody's. I don't know if it was a farm or whatever, but it was an open field. So their problem with wanting chickens was they didn't have the time to build a chicken coop. So we built the chicken coop in their yard, and we shared it.
Good thing you're friends with your pastor, right?
That's right. 1 week they would feed them and get the eggs, and the next week we would feed them and get the eggs.
That sounds like a pretty good deal.
It did. It worked out really well, and it was a fun project for my family to even build the coop. So we enjoyed that part, and then when our landlord did give way and say we could do stuff, it just so happened at that time that the pastor's family came to us and said, we don't want chickens anymore. And so we were able to, with friends' help, just lift the chicken coop over the fence.
Nice.
And we built a pen. We had to have them penned. And so chickens were our first thing. And I would encourage anybody to check, even in their cities. A lot of the cities around here will let you have a small flock of chickens if they're contained.
Yeah, it's becoming much, much more common. I've noticed that even in very, extremely urban places, where it's real cramped and everything like that. It's cool that people are realizing that some of these things are possible to do even when you're in a totally urban environment.
Right. And gardening is another really good way. I mean, you can even have a lot of your plants in among flowers and make it, around here, I live in the center of Amish country.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of started with these three things. You started with the whole grains, and then you started doing some gardening, mm-hmm. and then you got the chickens first. So when did you go from rental unit farming to, I'm assuming you guys own your farm now,
correct,
and moved out, and you're back in Ohio now. So when did that transition happen?
Well,
how long was this first stage going on for?
We were on that rental farm probably a year and a half, and we actually, that would be one caution I would have for everybody, is don't add too much too quickly. Add one thing at a time and get used to it. We were a little hasty. It was just my husband and my son and I. We had adopted a son, and he was probably 13, 14 at the time. And he made a deal with a friend of his and got a baby goat. And when you have goats, they're herd animals, and so we knew we needed 2 goats. And when I saw how much it was going to cost me to buy milk for that little goat, we just went ahead and bought a goat in milk. And then through another friend, we got to taste Jersey milk, and we were in love. So we started looking for a Jersey, and actually found a Jersey cow. Would have been in the last that we bought the Jersey cow in November of '98, and she calved in December. So then we had Jersey milk. We still had goats and goat milk. And then we moved to Ohio
and
next September.
That was okay, and that was still in Florida on the rental
like
property.
a half of an acre.
That's crazy.
It is. We had to buy hay, and although the chickens, then we let free range a little more, and they took care of the cow piles for us. So
and your landlord was okay with all this,
right? Because they were all still on that back little part that was fenced separately.
That's so cool.
And so then when we moved, it was kind of a running joke with everybody, because we had our stock trailer we bought, and we had 1 dog, 2 cows, 3 goats, and 4 chickens that we moved with us. We moved the chickens because they were my son's personal chickens, and we were already uprooting his life, and so we were trying to make it as easy on him as we could. And there's a lot of fun stories about our trip up. Not so fun either. Sunday afternoon.
Oh, they're funny in retrospect, I'm sure, right?
Yeah. Well, Sunday afternoon we blew a tire on the truck, and we're stuck out in the middle of nowhere in Georgia. But a drunk man one night when we parked, we had all the animals out tied up to the thing because we had to milk them all and everything. And he came stumbling up from the bars and looked twice and then almost ran to the hotel. I don't think he believed quite what he was seeing, but
how funny.
Yeah, it was fun. So when we got up here, I had a brother with the farm, and we stayed in his pop-up camper, and our farm animals went in with his animals, and so we started looking for property, and
Okay, so you moved back to Ohio before you even had a place, well, I guess property there for your farm, but you still had a place to put the animals, obviously.
Right. My husband was transferred.
Okay.
So that's what precipitated the move.
Prompted. Yep. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then we obviously had to look for a farm, and we're actually on our second farm now. We've been on this one 10 years.
Cool.
The first one we did buy, but it was a 2-hour commute for my husband, and he did that for 2 years, and that was really hard on him. So that's a long commute. Yeah. It was, and it was a 5-acre farm, and a lot of it was treed, and we had tried to get it logged and whatever, and we're having a hard time. So actually we moved about an hour closer to his work, and we got it. We're on 29 acres, so we're still a small as far as farms go.
But hey, if you could make it work on a 1/2 acre or whatever you had before, I'm sure 29 seems pretty darn big right now. So
it does. It seems really big.
So now, here's the big question I have for you: is how did you learn this stuff? Because I know you kind of took this in bites or in baby steps as you went through this, but how do you learn to farm, especially once you go from 1/2 acre to 29 acres like you have now?
I'm a reader.
Okay.
And I would read and, tell my husband what I was reading, and we would share. We tried to always find someone who did what we wanted to do, and we would ask questions. We would go help them. Like our first chicken butchering, well, we had butchered chickens in Florida, literally with the book in one hand and the knife in the other. Are
there any books there that you recommend people check out to get started with this? We can link them up in the show notes there.
Yeah, I really appreciate Joel Salatin's books. And his Pastured Poultry was probably the first one that gave us a lot of information on our broilers that we do. And but then, like I said, we found someone else who did it and asked them questions, and we actually found someone with the butchering equipment, and we would go help them butcher chickens so that we learned how to do it. And so, you know, that's how we started. But I have a good friend who has a herd share program in Virginia and has Jersey cows, and she's excellent on knowledge. And so, like, when I have a question I can't figure out or we have a problem, I call her. You know, we have a lot of people we know that do what we do, and you share information and you learn things. And that's why I say a farmer in training, we are still learning all the time.
Right. Right.
And,
so
you know, we've learned some by the bad. You know, we had couple little lambs that died because they got caught in our electric poultry netting and strangled because we had it off. Oh. It was just to separate, to keep the sheep out of the chicken area. My chickens' layers can go anywhere on the farm they want, and we were trying to keep the sheep from, you know, going there. And so we've learned, you know, we have to keep that electric so that when they touch it, they know to stay away. And so there has been hard lessons too.
Yeah, and that's something else I wanted to ask you about. Actually, it segues perfectly into it. You know, what have been some of the hardest parts about this transition from Urbanite to farmer in training, as you call yourself on your website? And what have been some of those hard moments, the challenging moments?
Our first cow, when she had her calf, we raised her for meat, and because she was half beef breed, and I was her mama, you know. I gave her bottle, and she loved us, and she came to us. And as it got closer to time to take her to the butcher, you know, it was very, very hard, although she did get really ornery the last 2 months, which made it a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. But we have learned now all of our beef cows are named sirloin of beef, T-bone, porterhouse, you know, to remind us from day one. We still love on them. I mean, our
animals. But you know
animals,
you're going to eat them then. Yeah.
Right. But it's in our head from the very beginning.
I love it.
And we actually just had a dairy cow that we took to the butcher this January. She was such an easy keep. She got way too fat on just grass and hay. And, you know, it's like, how do you put a cow on a diet that's on pasture when all they're getting is grass? And we couldn't get her bred. We tried AI. We tried putting her with the bull a couple times. And she was still young enough that but it was very hard to put her in that trailer to take her to the butcher. And that's probably the really big downside is
you get attached,
not getting attached.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is the hard lessons. Like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we had sheep dying, and we couldn't figure out what they were dying from. And again, I have a friend who has a lot of. She used to like shadow a vet, and she's very interested in that kind of stuff, and she raises sheep, and you know, she helped me with symptoms and trying to figure out, because we couldn't figure out anything to change so that they quit dying.
So what did you do?
And it ended up she just kind of like going through all these things. She said, well, there's no peach trees out by them, are there? And I'm like, well, as a matter of fact, there are. And peach tree leaves, we had no idea, were poison to sheep.
Oh, really?
And,
I did not know that.
And I guess any of the stone fruits, plums, peach, cherry. I knew wild cherry was, but you know, I didn't realize it was because of a stone fruit. And we hadn't even planted those trees back there. We think the people who had the property before us had thrown their compost to the chickens. And that was the first year we actually had gotten any fruit on them. And so we had been back there pulling fruit off, and leaves were falling. And it's when they're in their, when they're drying stage is when they're poison. And it matched exactly. So we cut down all those peach trees. I mean, we moved the fence away. We have movable fences. We have portable electric fences, which we love. And so we did move the fence away, but we cut them down because, you know, the wind or whatever could put them back in their pasture. But it's sometimes a mystery to figure out, and that's hard too.
So what have been some of the most enjoyable or rewarding parts? And also, I'd love to hear, I'm sure you have tons of funny stories about farming? I'd love to hear one of those if you have
right.
one that comes to mind.
Okay. Well, first of all, one of my biggest joys is this time of year, I've got baby lambs out there. And baby lambs, they race with abandon. They jump up and down like popcorn. That is one of my true joys of the spring, is watching my baby lambs. And
Your own personal entertainment.
It is. And we actually had somebody stop by and talk to my husband last night about something, and my husband's back was to the sheep, and the guy kept looking around, and finally he called his wife over out of the car. He goes, "Watch this. You got to watch this," because they're just so fun to watch. And this year they're all black. So that's even more.
Yeah, I saw the photos that you had put up on I think on your Facebook page. They look really cute.
We have had so many character building stories, but I think the one that we laugh about the hardest is when we lived next to our pastor's family. The whole back of their house was windows, so I know we were entertainment for them. And we had just gotten a dog. My son had wanted a dog forever, and when the landlord finally said, you can do whatever, but put it back. And he said, you can get a dog, but not in the house. So we had gotten my son this dog, and we prefer Australian Shepherds, and that's what she was, but she was still very much a pup. And she wanted to chase chickens. They're herding animals, and
oh, goody.
Those chickens were racing all over that back half of acre or whatever it was, and we called it the back 40. And we would go out there to do stuff, and she would come under the fence. And so, we were trying to train her and teach her. Well, one day we were out there, and we had one goat. It was the mama goat that we had bought in milk, and she did not like the dog at all. And my son was her favorite thing in the whole world. I mean, she lit up when he came out. She had her own special bleat for him, and her ears would go up. And so she was never real happy when he was playing with the dog. But all three of us were out there doing something, and here came the dog under the fence, and she started chasing chickens. So then we're chasing the dog, trying to catch the dog.
I could just see it.
And when she went to go around a corner, my son tried to cut her off and dove for her and missed. And it was like all we could think of was his goat. The goat's name was Minx. Was like, that dog just hurt my boy. Because she was always very graceful and very she was like an aristocrat. Mm-hmm. And she took off like a deer, and she's chasing the dog. So
you're chasing the dog.
Right.
And now the
dog's
sheep's
chasing the chickens.
Yep.
And the goat's now chasing the dog. And we're laughing so hard because we had never seen her.
And that your pastor neighbor is looking at you too, and he's cracking up.
I'm sure they were. They never said anything, but I'm sure they were. And then we had just gotten Buttercup, the cow, and she was big and pregnant. In fact, she calved in 3 weeks. And all of a sudden, she got all worked up, and she started in on the chase. And so we got all these animals running around. We're trying to catch the dog. And so finally my son caught the dog, and I caught the goat. And he's walking to the gate with the dog. He has her collar. And here comes the cow charging him. And so we're yelling, get out of the way, get out of the way. So he gets out of the gate and closes it just in time. But then it was for 10 minutes, the goat and the cow were doing 360s and jumping up, and they were so agitated. But we were all laughing so hard, we were almost sick. But
that's funny. That's really funny. The farm parade around your house, everybody chasing somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really funny. Well, so I want to transition here real quick because, a lot of people, they are in the city right now, and maybe they don't have that option to move out to a farm or a larger piece of land or something like that. What are some of the things that, from your experience, from what you've learned, that people who live in the city, that they can do right away to kind of become a little bit more self-sufficient with their food, the small things that they could do?
Obviously, garden. I mean, you can even have garden in containers on your patio if you lived in an apartment. Mm-hmm. A few tomato plants will give you, especially if you get like a paste tomato plant, will give you tomatoes to put up. Find a farmer's market. We've had people come out here before and help us, and we in turn have paid them in food. There's a lot of situations like that. There's places online you can look. There's eatwild.com and localharvest.org to find food in your area. And sometimes, like I think on localharvest.org, you can even do a search for like CSA or places where you can go work in exchange for stuff.
Cool. And then you don't have to have the farm, but you still get the benefits of having it and the experience.
And ask if you can do a small flock of chickens where you are. Chickens are, you don't have to have a rooster that crows. You'll still get eggs out of hens. Mm-hmm. And, a few chickens, although chickens can be kind of loud when they've laid an egg, but, there's Muscovy ducks. They don't quack at all. They don't make noise. So they would be a good backyard animal, and you could get duck eggs.
That sounds awesome to me. I love duck, and I love duck eggs.
But you just have to look around and what's important to you. You can grind your own, you could even find somebody that has a grinder that maybe will help you buy wheat and grind your own grains to get the nutrition that comes from a freshly ground grain. Mm-hmm. We have a lady that comes, well, she just moved, so she doesn't come here anymore, but she would come from pretty far away. I'm wanting to say it took her like an hour and a half to get out here, but she came every 2 weeks. She would stop at our farm. She would stop at another farm and get stuff from them, and stop at another farm and get stuff from them. And then like in season, she would get strawberries from the Amish. And, it was her bi-weekly is all she could, feel like she could afford to do with gas and everything. But she found as many products in one area as she could find. She had a milk share with somebody, a herd share, I should say, where she could get milk. And, if you get milk, like with 5 gallons of milk a week, I can make cheese, butter, yogurt. My husband still has milk for his coffee. Mm-hmm. And cheese is not that hard to make at home. And you can make it from store-bought milk if you want it. I mean, if that's all you have available, and you don't have all the other junk they add to a lot of the cheeses and stuff.
Right.
But you just, what is most important to you? And for me, it was I needed the vitamin E, which came from the freshly ground wheat. And, it hadn't been taken out of there. And we saw just with the grains alone and going to like brown rice instead of white rice. And we saw such a difference in our health. Huge
difference. Yeah.
And, my son, once we started drinking our own milk and, his feet quit growing. We couldn't keep the kid in shoes and because he grew out of them so fast. And there's such a difference. And both my husband and I will say this, both my husband and I are overweight. And part of that with me started with my infertility treatments all those years ago because they put me on prednisone for over a year. And I was young and dumb and I wanted a baby. So I did whatever the doctor told me.
Which is normal to do, right?
Yeah. And so, but we had blood work done for our insurance or whatever. And even the nurse, she was like, well, with your age and being overweight and we need to check your blood. I said, well, I don't really care about my cholesterol or whatever. But I finally agreed to do it. And then it ended up being a good thing because it added money into our health savings account. But all my numbers are really, really good. They can't believe it. Yes, I'm overweight, but I know I need to exercise more and whatever, but I'm a healthy fat person, and
well, no, and I think it's great that you bring that up because a lot of people, and especially in our culture, we kind of just focus on the exercise portion of it. And I'm not, negating it by any means. It is important, but a larger percentage of it, and especially the overall health equation, really is in the foods that you eat. And I think that's great that you share the progress that you and your family have made just from just doing that part of it.
Well, and see, I have 4 brothers, and all 4 of them, well, 3 of them have stents put in for their heart. One of them had total heart failure and has a defibrillator pacemaker. My dad has had a quadruple bypass and had a heart attack 2 years ago. My mother died in her sleep, and they just assume it was her heart because she was healthy as far as we knew. And so that gives me another incentive to make sure I'm doing right, because I am like, my percentages there don't look good. And I know ultimately I believe my health is in God's hands, but I don't think that allows me to do whatever I want to do and then expect him to make me healthy. I have to do my part. So all of our meats, our beef we raise, our lamb is all grass-based. We raise pastured broilers. We do turkeys on pasture every year. We do pigs like every other year, but that's not a big part of it. Our eggs are from free-range chickens that are given non-GMO grains. We have a grass-fed Jersey cow that we get our milk from, and I make all of our cheese and our butter, and so that makes a difference in how you feel, in your health. We don't get every illness that goes around.
Well said. I think that's a great point to to cap it off with. Absolutely. Before we wrap this up, though, I want to make sure that everybody kind of knows where they can connect with you. Could you tell us a little bit about AmazingGrazeFarm.com? I know you have a general store there where you're selling all sorts of really helpful products for people to get into doing more of this stuff. So maybe you could give us a quick rundown on that and then let us know where people can best connect with you.
Okay. I started the store, again, like I said, because I would teach people how to do something, and then they'd say, where can I get that? And I'd send them somewhere else. Most everything in my store, I would say without a doubt, I would stand behind, and a lot of it I use what I sell. I try to find, more items, but the general store link is an online store. We ship, right now it's just the United States. I have shipped a couple things to Canada with some special, deal for somebody, and I'm willing to work with them. But
that's good to know, because my wife and we actually live in Canada. So
right. Yeah. So, I have worked with them. I just have to figure out the shipping and all that, and the customs papers and whatever. So, but we are willing to work with people. The website is got our blog. If you search back in our blog, I actually have a story. It's called Tales, Tails, Tales from the Farm, and it is our story of our journey from city slickers, as I call it, to farmers.
Cool.
And
we'll link that up.
And so it's like in parts, so you can take it in parts. There's a lot more to my website that's not actually showing up there because I just switched to WordPress, but I have recipes, I have a kitchen section, I have cheese making pages, I have bread making pages, lots of recipes.
Awesome.
I have an herb page from, we're very into herbs, not only, for your food and stuff, but that's our first choice of medicines. And
cool.
So there's a lot of information there, and I'm constantly, as I get time, relinking up some of the pages that used to have a link to our old system that are up there.
But I know what that's like to move it over.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
And the blog is usually pretty up to date with, like, as new items come in the store, I post them there. There's usually pictures of animals and stuff going on the farm, recipes sometimes. And you can sign up for an email thing where it comes right in your email. You don't even have to go back to the web page. So
awesome. Well, we'll send people that way. It's amazing. For those of people who are just listening on audio, it's Amazing Graze, not Grace, Graze, Graze farm.com, and you can check all of that out. Well, Marci, this has been really fun and super insightful. I want to say thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we'll link all of that stuff up below so people can get in touch with you and check everything out. And this has been another issue of Beyond the Peel TV. And although no video per se this week, this has been an awesome interview, and we will see all of you guys again next week. Just a reminder that if you're new to cooking with whole foods, or you're looking for the easiest way to get gourmet whole food meals on the table, then check out our e-cookbook, The Whole Food Revelation. It's full of delicious recipes, meal plans, and grocery lists to make eating real as easy as possible for you guys. You can check out a sample at beyondthepeel.net/WFR.